Hello everyone. Yeah, my name's David Ashmore. I work in the geography department. I'm a postdoc in glaciology. So just to sort of jump to the headlines, I research kind of what happens when the surface of the glacier melts, what happens to that meltwater and what that means for sea level event, basically. So what I did with the ECR Returners Fund is I went to work at a geological survey of Canada in Ottawa, and they've got a huge amount of field data, which is very valuable in glaciology, so I got access to that. I had to try and put bullet points on how it benefits my career, so there's new collaboration, new people to work with, new model forcing, whole new set of model experiments, and then a new paper, which is very close to being submitted. So just a sort of couple of minutes on just why this is interesting to me. So this is a glacier. This is Greenland looking inland, high up on the ice sheet. You can't really see much melt going on, but you see this development has really developed hydrological system further down. I'm sort of interested in that transition, especially higher up, where you can't really see what's happening to the water. So to me, it's really interesting that about 40% of glacial meltwater in Greenland actually doesn't reach the sea. It's retained, it refreezes in the firn. This is really hard to study, so I use numerical models. This is just a cartoon of the one that I use. But there's not very much data. And that's why places like the Geological Survey of Canada are so valuable, especially when you're looking in the high Arctic or the Antarctic. So what the Geological Survey of Canada do is they maintain a network of weather stations and glaciological monitoring stations. You look things like this, they go up every year, and as you can imagine, that's fairly expensive. So I started to model Devon ice cap, which is here, just on the maps on the right. So that's Greenland, and that's North America. And again, obviously I'm not going to run through these, but these are just a taste of the kind of outputs that I've sort of been producing, made possible by the fund. So I'm looking at how we think about percolation in snowpacks and how water is stored and what that means for how much mass the ice sheet is actually losing. So that's me. Thank you.
And next up, we have a joint presentation from Alice Cabrera and Camille Delafigue.
So, hello, my name is Anice. Better. So, I am a seabird ecotoxicologist, which means I work on environmental contaminants in wild population of seabirds. At the moment, I'm interested in the combined effects of contaminants and parasites in seabirds. And to look at the effects, first we need to understand the causes of exposure. And in fact, both contaminants and parasites make their way into seabirds through food intake, so through their diet. So the main aim of the grant was to look into the dietary sources of contaminants and parasites through the stable isotope technique. And this technique is a very powerful one. And Camille, who also works in the same department as me, she's a specialist in this technique. So we decided to apply for a joint grant to apply this technique to my model species. So just a word about the technique. So the stable isotope technique is a technique based on the principle that we are what we eat. So from any sample of tissue, we can get the signature of what we eat. So this is the same for seabirds. So if we take, for example, a blood sample, we can extract proteins, and then through spectrometry techniques, we can calculate isotopic ratios, such as carbon and nitrogen stable isotope ratios, which can indicate where the birds feed and at what trophic level they feed. But we can do more, we can go into more details and extract specific amino acids from the protein and calculate the isotopic ratios on these specific amino acids.
and this can give a better insight on feeding habitats and trophic level. So our model species is the European shag. We study a population on the Isle of May in Scotland. This population is exposed and highly infested by a gastrointestinal parasite, and there is a huge variation between individuals in how much parasite they get. So we don't know much about what the birds eat, and so we can't explain why we have these differences in parasite burdens. So thanks to the stabilizer technique, which I show some preliminary results now, so you can see carbon and nitrogen over in this biplot, which shows two very different groups of individuals. These groups are males and females. So with this technique, we discovered that males and females have very different feeding strategies. This was not expected at all. And now, thanks to more detailed, specific amino acid technique, we will look into more details in these differences. So just to finish, we can say that this grant was a very good opportunity for us. It is the first collaboration between our two groups, and so it was good for me because I learned and applied a new technique which is very powerful for my, which is not used in my field, so I will apply it to my field, and it's very powerful for me. And for Camille, it is also very interesting because she's a specialist in the technique, but she's mainly worked on seals, so applying this same technique on another species and other tissues will increase also our expertise in the technique. And of course, we have enlarged our network connections. So thank you for attention.
So next up we have Dr. Richard Dunning discussing experimental economics in planning.
Alright, so I'm a lecturer in planning, but I obviously can't spell it, so apologies for that. My PhD and then postdoc were in behavioural economics in kind of urban studies more broadly. When I came to Liverpool, I said that I was going to help to expand the kind of team looking at behavioural economics within the kind of urban realm, so applying insights from behavioural economics to kind of a whole host of different issues across kind of the urban escape and across planning issues. The problem with that is that I'm not an economics expert, so I needed to hook in with some genuine economists that could help to run some experiments with us, and I didn't have that network here in Liverpool. So the early careers scheme for me was designed to do two things. One was to kind of create a network within the university rather than external to the university, and then to pilot an experiment within the university as well. So it was really helpful in terms of kind of one of the main things was having a legitimate reason to contact people from across the university. So I could go to people in the management school in economics and say, please would you come and talk to me? I've got some money to actually do something, which was a really helpful kind of starter for that conversation. The problem with those conversations is that they then became very theoretical and very complex, and the kind of size of the scheme doesn't really let you deal with that. It's just a small pot of money. So it is only a kind of Kickstarter, it's only an entry into this. We haven't got very far in terms of the experiments. We're going to run them on Thursday, and I'll let you know what the outcome of that is if you're interested in them. My advice would be, if you're going to put in one of these schemes, be quite careful about what you put into it. There are a couple of things that I wasn't allowed to include in it, including incentives. So that actually means I can't use the experimental results for publications, but I can use this as a pilot study to then go on and inform kind of future research as well. So links can develop really rapidly across the university. They can turn into really complex ideas that are much more difficult, and that actual kind of experimentation took kind of a lot longer than I thought it was going to take. The actual experiment, if you're interested, is around risk perceptions and planning. So are we training planning students to be risk adverse? So when we create new developments in cities, or when developers come with suggestions, are they inherently kind of risk averse and wanting to avoid kind of any development that might be problematic to it? So we'll see how that goes on Thursday. A couple of other really useful things about it. It gave me a focal point for my thinking. So as I hit a lectureship, I was given teaching that was really interesting, but not my specialism. So it took up a huge amount of time. Having this small grant actually enabled me to legitimately spend a little bit of time focusing on something that I found really interesting. So it is kind of my little baby that I'm interested in. So kind of interesting idea and a good escape avenue for some of those kind of other thoughts. Really quick and easy win for PDR, an appraisal. It is only small, but it is a box to tick and to add to the CV, which is helpful for everyone. Career progression. I don't think there's a huge career progression, but I'm still going through the experience at the moment. And it is a kind of relatively new area for me, so lots of links that will hopefully be useful for the future.
Discussing how the LA Career Research and Maternal Health participate.
So good afternoon to everyone, and I'm from the School of Engineering, and what I've done is to list more or less a little bit of my background and where, and also my academic career and where this small pot of money helped me. And so I got my PhD in Italy, and I've done almost everything there, and US, and I moved to the UK for a postdoc. I was supposed to last 14 months, then it was 20 months. And then at the end of my postdoc, they told me, oh, look, there is an opening for a temporary lecture. Do you want to stay? I said yes. And it was a mistake. So postdoc was a lot of fun, and I was doing my research. When I got the position as temporary lecturer, it was mainly teaching. It was a lot of teaching. I don't know if you are teaching, but I was teaching 35-ish credits per year. It was my first year of teaching. It was a disaster. When I accepted it, I thought, okay, I can do my research, and doing the teaching is not true. So anyway, I managed to get a little bit of money for funding a PhD student with a colleague, and since September 2016, I became a permanent lecturer, so that increased my teaching load, which is positive. But in this time, who was doing the research for me? There was no one, because I was teaching and no one else was doing my research. And at the end of your postdoc, you usually have a lot of stuff that you want to put together and publish, and I wasn't able to do that. So, as you said, as I told you, I got that amount of scholarship. So in October last year, in October started my first PhD, and he started doing some work for me. And then I got the DPT, that doctoral training program. You can get scholarship from that. It's funded by TSRC in relation to how much money your department gets. It's very useful. Try to apply if you manage. And then I start either applying as a co-I or a PI for different pot of money, because I need to establish my track record. I was like on pause for 1 year, and then I need someone to work for me and to put it forward, because otherwise you don't have a track record for applying for larger grants. And I applied for a number of them. Everything that was available I applied for. And this one, I think I got it in February, a year and something ago, and my slide was much longer, and probably some of it will be on the bottom here. But as you can see, at the beginning you have no track record, so you cannot ask much money. I asked a little bit of money, and the important thing that I was asking money for getting students for working with me. Because I need someone for doing either finishing the work that I had started or doing other work. And so I managed to get the scholarship, and I got also this one that allowed me to apply for a second, a little bit larger call. I didn't get it. So this one, when I get it, I did the exit. But out of this one, now everything my slide is my fault, but out of it, I got I found a new collaborator, and I managed to apply for another program, and I had a number of conference paper and paper in progress with it. the final aim of this is to find a student, because this collaboration with Brazil is to find a student, a PhD student funded by the Brazilian government. Now they get rid of the Engineering Without Border scheme, but there may be other schemes to fund the PhD students working for the two of us. Again, you cannot use this money for working yourself, you cannot use this money for doing anything, at least not in engineering, because it's not enough. You can use it for traveling, you get to know people, and you try to apply for either grants together or for scholarship together. And then, going down, I increase the number of my PhD students, because there are CDP, there are Leather Women Center that gives PhD students, there are venture capitalists, there is everyone that if you push a bit can give you a scholarship. And here I list the number of papers, how they increased along the way so this one gave me a new conference paper, then I got a new one, and then as soon as you start having people working for you, you have someone that is doing the research. So because if you are gonna go ahead with the academic career, what you are gonna do is not research, it's just writing for fun. I have also the video, but if you are wondering what I do, it's this. And this mainly, I have toys in the wind tunnel, then they move, and then we define control algorithm for controlling them. Flutter. And now the controller is on and the flutter is damped. This one is non-linear. This one is a morphing. You may have heard about morphing in aeronautics, so continuous deflection, deformation of the shape. And I'm an experimentalist and I need people for doing this. And the other thing that I do, but autonomous construction, and this one is my other PhD student is playing with cars that are printing and doing other things together. I play with soft actuators. You may not have seen them. Is a very fancy thing in robotics nowadays. They play, they move before they are compliant. Very good. What is the message? I have two advice. Don't take a temporary lectureship. And the second one, find scholarship. So if you are starting, don't aim for large grants because you usually don't get it. And then if you apply for ECR, they give you only money for a postdoc. That is, at the early stage are difficult to manage. But apply for PhD, for scholarship for PhD students. And then after that, okay, that's everything.
So next up we have Adriana discussing engaging key stakeholders in research design to enhance research relevance and impact.
Hi everyone, thank you for inviting me. Thank you. So my name is Adriana Nilsson. I am at ULMS in the management school, but I'm actually a political scientist, so I work mainly on governance, transnational governance issues, complex problems, solutions of complex problems in policy, in renewable energy and particularly health. So I've been working so far with essential medicines or access to medicines and transnational governance to kind of push this towards country policy. So I have been working on the transnational level, and I'm working now on a research proposal where I want to look at how these kind of transnationally decided guidelines are being implemented on the ground. So that's a new step for me. And for that, I really thought I needed the input. I wanted to invite the input of stakeholders that are working on this, right? So that was my ERC, the ECR was about a part of it, which is like, I want to go and talk to the World Health Organization about this and get a lot of information on what they are doing and what they need to know in particular. And I thought that was important because I'm kind of trying to marry two strands of research here, or policy here, which is the universal health coverage and the access to medicines, which are kind of treated separately, but I kind of have a feeling they should be together. So I wanted to bring these people in to talk about it. So if you, as Hollander was saying, more and more people want to prove that there will be an impact on what you're trying to do, right? So I thought this was, and that you kind of navigate research risks I was afraid they would turn to me and said, well, great, but you've never worked in any country. Why should we give you money to do that? So I wanted to back me up with people who actually have been working like that and could help me. So I thought this would really make sure that I was addressing the key questions that should be addressed, and that I would have the legitimacy and the access to go on the ground to talk to these people and do the research. So targeting impact, feasibility, and lowering risks. So we're going to see here, the ECR is just for one engagement with the World Health Organization. I used other pots of funding to get other stakeholders on board. So the pump priming was to go to the Management Sciences for Health. This is a global US NGO working on implementation as well. Boston University and the French University were the kind of the academic stakeholders in this leading research in the world. And ECR was for the WHO. So what I did, I was just like £650, ECR, but it was really extremely useful. So I went to this workshop. There was just like 20 people across the developing world. Most of them are policymakers, so they usually don't accept you, but because I had some research done with them, they allowed me to come. So it was a 5 days of full engagement with all these issues of essential medicines and access to medicines in universal health coverage. It was 45 hours of material. A lot of material is out of the public domain because they were really talking to policymakers, not to the public. I actually get to 6 one-to-ones meetings with the WHO staff that are working on the kind of sub-research questions that I want to address. So they had direct input on this. And it was really useful because I started research thinking I want to do BRICS. I'm Brazilian, I'm interested in India, I have a lot of work on technology that India comes in. And when I got out of this, I didn't want to do BRICS anymore. So it was really, really important for me. And they all assured me that they would intervene and get me in contact with their country staff and really get me access to all the local staff they have. So I think another very important thing was that they also reassured me that my feeling that the UHC and access to medicines should be kind of studied together. They are not only correlated, they should be entangled. That was a kind of feedback. We need that. So if you write anything about that, we're going to use this straight into our own material because we need this framework. We need this empirically and theoretically. And they also are very important. The next 5 years, implementation is a key issue for WHO. So they're also very interested that there is this direct link of what they do and how it comes up. And the other thing is also I had kind of work packages with all the different countries. And if you see the countries that they look like now, Brazil and South Africa, yeah, still BRICS, but Cuba, Ghana, Turkey, and Norway are very different countries from what I thought I should be doing. And I think I have a much more interesting sample and a much more interesting research to propose right now than I had before. So I think that's the future game. Okay.
Okay. I don't have slides, so they don't distract you from the story. So I think I applied for ECR in a different situation than everyone who's posed before, because I'm in my first year postdoc, and I applied for ECR when I was 4 months before the end of my contract. And this 1 year postdoc was meant to collect data for bigger grant applications. And my work was dealing with validation of new rodent model for Achilles ovaries injury. So we tried to cause the Achilles tendinopathy in rodent model in a controllable manner and humane manner, so we can study the pathophysiology of the disease. So the model I've been working with proved to be, well, not as promising as we hoped for. So 4 months before the end of my funding, I found myself in a bit of a dead end. And I knew that we need a complete redesign of the model if it's going to lead anywhere. And my background is as a vet surgeon, and I work with some molecular biology methods, but I'm not an engineer, so I needed an engineer team that has an experience with working with this specific tissue, which was very specific demands. So I reached out to the Professor Hazel's Queen Group in Queen Mary University of London. They worked before with our institute, which is, I should have probably said at first, Institute of Aging and Chronic Disease. So they worked with us, but not with, I was not personally involved in this collaboration, and also, not obviously they didn't work on this specific project. So I reached out to them, So the ECR helped me to get on a few trains to London. We did some brainstorming, then we did some like preliminary experiments, and now we came up with a new design of the model, which is about 90% ready. But I think more important is that by collaborating with them, I got also involved in their research tandem research group that they're leading. So this is a multi-center initiative that I've been invited to before because I started working with the group. So I think it's like further helped me to expand my connections within people in the field. And also, obviously I progressed with the project, so now we hope we're going to get the model that we can actually put in grant applications. And meanwhile, my contract got extended for another year, and I don't know if there's a direct correlation, but I think showing that I can actually push it forward probably was helpful to persuade that I should stay around because I can actually get things done. And also, I think getting this small bit of funding was also a useful demonstration that I can like apply for things on my own and get funding even if like a little small on my own. Because otherwise I applied for like 5 or 6 figure fellowship applications and they all went down straight on. I'm not sure what's the solution for that. One of the colleagues suggested to apply for small funding like PhD studentship, but as a postdoc I cannot do this. So I'm not sure what's the response if we get shut down on big applications. Well, ECR is one of those rare occasions where you can actually get a bit of research funding for yourself at this career stage. Okay, thank you.
Okay, next up we have Dr. Andrea Brizek.
Yes, good morning everyone. So I had this sort of research idea. It's fantastic title, molecular and optoelectronics of single metal cluster junctions. So I wanted to chuck a tiny metal cluster made of like 6, 10, 15 atoms between 2 non-electrons, drive current through it, and basically see what happens. I applied for the ECR further to basically develop the skills in preparing these metal clusters for the proper synthetic tools in the lab, and to gather preliminary data to support the fellowship application right now. So I was selected to participate in the Future Leaders Fellowship and submitted it in July, so there was no preliminary data. The good thing is I'm in September, midway through September, 2 values arrived. Fantastic, great idea, we got to fund this. Then 1 week before the PI response review, the 3rd review arrived. And that was it. This will not work. It's rubbish. It's crap. Pardon my French. So he's called me at 2. I wrote up the rebuttal letter with the preliminary data I collected with the ECR fund, which showed it should actually work. And I prepared this cluster, very little 2 volts, still current, no breakdown, so it should work. But it was bad enough. Damage was done. The actual proposal was rejected. And well, I have the preliminary data now, which is good. I know someone believes in me enough to give me this sort of 2.5 grand to work on my research. So I got a boost of confidence, a confidence boost by the ECR fund. And I finalized a Royal Society University Research Fellowship with the preliminary data. So it's been submitted. Keep your fingers crossed for me. I think the reviewers cannot doubt the feasibility of the project. And that's all. So it's been good for me. At least it kept me sane.
Yeah, no, actually. Yes. Okay, so next up, Constantis.
Thank you very much. So, hello everybody. Thank you very much for being here today. So, in the next few slides, I'm going to speak to you for the project for which I applied for the ECR funding, and that is, as Helen said, the implementation of a two-phase software performing parallel. Now, before the ECR, I've been using an in-house code which was able to investigate fluids, single fluids, using computational fluid dynamics, and it was actually implemented by some of my colleagues in Portugal. Now, the characteristic of this code is that these computations were serial, meaning that everything, any problem that one could study, could only be studied in one CPU. Now, during my PhD, I've added some extra modules inside the code, and I was able to study two-phase flows However, for those dealing with these issues, these problems can be very time consuming because the resolution needs to be increased. So I applied for the funding, and what I wanted to achieve was to further upgrade the current code in order to perform in parallel, meaning that this problem would split these several small mini problems with different CPUs, and also to further improve the current code. So I used all the amount of money to visit Portugal, where I went as a visiting researcher in the Department of Mechanical Engineering, where I stayed and I worked alongside one of the colleagues there, Dr. Alexander Afonso, and we further improved the code. So as you can see here, we were able to investigate some more complex situations. We parallelized initially while I was there some parts of the code, but we also set a plan, because it's not an easy task, we set a plan for a global parallelization so that we reach to 100% of the parallelization. And also we had the chance to sit together, because it's always different when you're close to the other person, and discuss future collaboration. So concluding how the ECR funding helped me. So I was able, with this project, with the outputs of this project, to present this work in two international conferences. There is one paper that we're currently we're in internal reviews, and hopefully we're going to submit it soon. But also, as I said before, it gave us a chance to discuss for future collaborations, and currently we have we are working on a numerical implementation of a new viscoelastic model on top of this code, together with Professor Otu. But the most important thing is that the base of this work is going to be, all this work is going to be the base for me to apply for an early research fellowship. Thank you very much.
So next up is Dr. Anna Bucking-Welsh from HSS. Sorry. I'm from the history department, and I work on modern British history, and in particular I work on histories of civic society and on the role of the public in forms of international engagement. So my ECR fund was for a project of pilot stuff towards the start of a project on youth and global citizenship, ideas around how young people should be trained to be global citizens in the post-war period. This is at a point where, I've been at Liverpool for a while. I was lucky in that I started out in a lectureship straight away, so I've had stability, but the big thing I haven't had is research time. So now that my first monograph is out of the way, I'm figuring out how to get set up with new projects. So one of the things with the ECR fund, as others have mentioned, is that it's been very useful in kind of acting as an early form of small funding, hopefully to kind of do some pilot studies and prove some points as I move on to bigger grants. I've used it in two ways. I've used it to fund a research trip to archives, the kind of bread and butter of historical research, and I also used it for a small networking event that I held at the London campus, where I got together 5 or 6 other historians working on histories of youth, where we discussed kind of possible opportunities for future collaborations that we might have might work on together, particularly thinking about how we might eventually move towards large collaborative grants or networking grants. At the moment, I'm still in the kind of stage of figuring out exactly how this has been useful for me, in the sense that the one thing the ECR fund hasn't given me is time. So I have done my archival research and got hundreds and hundreds of photos of archival materials, which will be incredibly useful at some point. And I think they prove that there are the case studies there for the project, but I haven't yet had the time to work through them and to write them up in material. And then in terms of the collaborative work, that I think is proving to be really useful already. So we've got ongoing conversations about the kinds of conferences in particular we'll have in the short term and how those might act as a foundation. So we're currently planning for a conference next September, and kind of thinking in particular about smaller pots of money that we can apply to again, how we can build up training and funding opportunities for all of us involved in the grant, and how we can fund other ECR researchers. So there are a number of kind of smaller pots of money that we'll go on to apply for that will support that. The hope is that once we've kind of got that under our belt, then we'll scale up to possibly a larger conference, and then once collectively we have a bit of breathing space and there's some research lead that lines up for a few of us, we'll start working on a bigger collaborative grant, which enables us to kind of get the time that we need to do this.
I'm a lecturer in the Department of Politics, and I decided to do this old school and not use PowerPoint slides. So, the project that I'm working on at the minute looks at refugee lived experience on the Balkan routes. And the reason that I wanted to apply for the ECR fund was to be able to take it in a slightly different direction. So the project is collaborative. I work with colleagues at Aston University, and so far we've collected a number of different stories from Serbia, from Athens, and from the Aegean Islands. And this ended in an exhibition with Paper Exchange in November. And I've got some of the photographs with me, and if you want to have a look at them. And I've picked a very particular couple of photographs that link to the project and what it was going to look for. The project I'm doing now looks at alternatives to refugee camps. And the reason I've got these photographs with me is because they highlight what refugee camps look like. And the images people have in their head are very different to the images that are reality. In particular, I've got a picture from Moria, which is on Lesbos, which is probably one of the most famous camps you will have heard of. And it says, "Welcome to prison," which obviously has been graffitied onto it, but you can see barbed wire. And you have these images that make you realise that there needs to be an alternative. So what I'm using the ECR fund for is I will be spending a month on the island of Samos in January to gather further information. I've also done interviews in the various different reception centres and camps, as well as with commissioners. So there's been this ability to build a background of information to see what projects are, what alternatives are in place, and what alternatives we can then suggest. Now the other side of this, and what I'm using the fund for, is to go to Parliament in February, and then to also speak to MPs in Toronto in March, to share these findings, to try and have some sort of impact in changing our alternative to how we think about refugee provision. So that's the purpose of the project. At the minute I haven't done much of that because it all starts in January, but that will be what I'm doing. And the fund has been very useful for kind of providing the background funding to be able to do this and to be able to spend a month away. Admittedly though, I kind of agree with you, it hasn't bought me any time. So it is fitting that in around my other responsibilities as a lecturer. But yes, it's been very useful. Thank you very much.
Just a couple of things that I wanted to point out before we start with the questions is that on the programme we do have Dr. Hugo Kinsanlam, who was supposed to present during the session, but unfortunately he couldn't make it. Secondly, I think it's kind of become obvious during this session, but for the ECR Reserves Fund there are two options. So one is that you can apply as a single PI solely on your own, and for that you can apply for up to £2,500, or you can do a joint submission, a PI and a co-I from two different departments, and we can apply for funds of up to £5,000. And finally, I think we can all say that there is such a variation here on the research that is funded through this pot of money, that obviously now we can open up to questions, and be that on any of the research that you've heard about or the career progression side of it. Has anybody got any questions? Yes. No, it's from within the university.
So I think part of it is the narrative how you sell is going forward. And so actually proving that you are capable of doing issues and how you're going to enhance the university through what you've done in this as well. So what will you offer in the future to develop through the fellowship or doing more collaboration. Those kind of things are vital. So it isn't just saying how you have to work, but how to do it. I think everyone's pushing forward and so time is one thing. And I think that's for
Any other questions? No? I have one for David. Oh, I can't remember it. I should have written it down. I'll have to look at it later. So. We can use the microphone.
I just ask when it's a joint proposal if we apply not with the same or alone, or we change the order of PIs. Does it work?
I think that because you can apply for more, you can apply for up to 5 times 2. I think the same principle would apply. It can't be applied for.
Yeah, okay.
Just to clarify as well, if you want to, you can only apply with another related research apply and you can't apply with your experience for
I've heard a question. So in terms of this funding, do you think it was more important to get the collaboration or to get the results? Because from the different ones they could kind of grasp which was the kind of main focus, but your focus.
I mean, I'm a postdoc, so it's fixed term, so I need papers every, so there's sort of two ways of answering that. Is so in the near term, sort of the results are what's important, but if I do end up getting a permanent position or continuing in the field, then I think the collaboration will be more important.
Any final questions?
One more question specifically for Anna. I know the PPA here. bit of both, in the sense that, yeah, within my discipline there is an expectation that you write monographs, so that and that monographs are highly valued within the ref for my discipline, so there's particular pressure to do that. I think I was in the position where in starting out there's a strong expectation that you write up or you do your first monograph, your PhD one, and that I think has more connotations of get it done and get it out of the way, my experience, than the second one. But I think partly I'm probably letting come across the fact that I've been desperate to start on new things for ages, and it's been really nice to finally set that aside and have a bit of space to be doing the things, that like glittery, shiny things I've been trying not to be distracted by for ages.
Any last question? Does anyone have any comments?
Just that the form is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So it's not actually very time consuming to do the form, unlike lots of grant applications. So it's definitely worth applying for.
Okay, so can we just thank all of our speakers once again? So lunch is being served down in the atrium on the ground floor. We've got a break for an hour and a half, so there are some stands down there as well from various different associations. We've also got at 1:45 a half-hour presentation in here from Research Professional. So they're going to show you how to use the internet website here. Right, thank you.
Absolutely. Well, we've got